Hey, you guys remember the video that I did about the underground tunnel maps all around the United States? Well, oh boy. Well, I have something to add with it that we completely missed. I missed. And now we have something to add to it that is going to possibly answer all of the questions scientists have had about Derinkuyu, about the questions they had about the hypogeum, other locations that have yet to be discovered, and how about locations such as underground in the United States that the government may be suppressing from the people. All right. Let's take a look at first the underground structure of the hypogeum. Now, in case you guys haven't seen any of my other videos where I discuss about the topographical structures of Baalbek and the pyramids, how they were created by none other than the ancient Atlantean / Anunnaki visitors, and they're the ones who created the topographical structures, that the huge structures way back in antiquity, 10,000 years ago. Has it escaped anybody's attention that in the Egyptian myths they talk about the underworld? That's right, the underworld. What do you think they meant by the underworld, and why was the underworld important to them? Let's take a look here.
Use of advanced technology on Malta can be found underground. In 1902, construction workers, while building the foundation for several houses, accidentally discovered a mysterious underground sanctuary dating to 2500 BC. Called the hypogeum, the subterranean structure was revealed to be 3 levels deep, all hewn from solid stone.
It's been estimated that they removed more than 2,000 tons of stone from these subterranean chambers to create a space that beautifully replicates the temples above ground.
Yeah. Now that gives you a whole new meaning to as above, so below, doesn't it? That's right. As above, so below. Let's take a look at the other structure of Derinkuyu. Now there may be a couple other structures underground we're not going to cover here in this presentation, but let's take a look at Derinkuyu for a moment.
Night has seen the construction of more modern structures. But in 1963, a simple home renovation in the town of Derinkuyu led to an extraordinary discovery when a cave wall was opened, revealing a passageway to an underground city thousands of years old and more than 280 feet deep.
I've been there on multiple occasions, and it's incredible because there's 13 stories that go deep into the ground with ventilation shafts and 15,000 little shafts that bring air to even the deepest of levels.
Incredibly, the number of rock rooms that were found could hold over 20,000 men, women, and children. There was even evidence of religious centers, storerooms, wine presses, and stables for livestock.
Oh, Derinkuyu would have been a massive undertaking for anyone, even in modern times, with modern equipment. But in those days, it would have been stupendous. Equal to the pyramids. At Derinkuyu, because of the softness of the stone, you had to be very careful that you provided enough pillar strength to support the floors above. Otherwise, you'd have catastrophic cave-ins. Surprisingly, there's no evidence of any catastrophic cave-ins, so they were apparently extremely clever and knew their material. We're talking deep antiquity. It is mind-boggling to understand how they could have done this. Perhaps they had help from some other civilization.
But just who built this massive underground city? And what mysterious force drove them to live underground?
Why would people want to live deep underground in these weird caverns like that? It seems kind of scary.
Why indeed would anybody want to live underground? But that's not the right question, is it? It's why would anybody need to live underground? Why would anybody need to live underground? And what do structures above ground like Stonehenge and other henges around the globe have to do with any of these underground structures? We are going to have to take a look at the Native American legends about the Kachina and some of the other lizard people that allegedly live underground. That's right, the lizard giants that live underground in North America. That's what we're going to need to look to. But before we do that, let's take a look at some of the giant stuff that we find here in the United States.
Just an understanding of who these giants really were, who kind of ruled ancient America, going way, way back into the distant past. And we're talking not just in Ohio, but all over America, from California to New England, and even all around the world. And so there's really a mystery here that must be revealed. And Jim and people like Ross Hamilton and others are really starting to get to the bottom of this. So we're here with Jim Vieira.
Of an 8-foot skeleton with double rows of teeth. Reported by George Sheldon, who's a really well-known historian. So it got me interested, like, what does that mean, double rows of teeth? So we read through thousands of pages of town histories in Massachusetts and New England, and I found similar findings: 7'8" double rows of teeth in Middleborough, Mass, 7-foot double rows of teeth in Martha's Vineyard. Then I came to your conference several years ago and heard the speakers and heard you and heard Ross Hamilton talk about similar things with the same anatomic anomalies. So to date, myself and a researcher I'm working with have amassed over 1,100 accounts, like you see on the wall, oftentimes by university-trained anthropologists and archaeologists. I have accounts that go up to 1981 too. This isn't all, 1743, and it's a rather compelling and long list of evidence.
Great mysteries of the West is what happened to these giants. There was nearly 60 skeletons brought out of this cave, but today they're nowhere to be found. Is it that there is some kind of archaeological cover-up that has occurred here? Something that concerns giants?
English folklore and the giants of Britain is Jennifer Westwood.
In the beginning, in Britain, it was inhabited only by giants. And in those days it was called Albion. And after the fall of Troy, a hero called Brutus came here with all his men and decided to conquer Albion. And so they battled for a bit with all these very savage giants. And they slew most of them. But there was one called Gogmagog that they kept alive, 12 foot high.
So, did you recognize the name of the place that it was called before it was Great Britain? It was called Albion. Remember that name, Albion, because that's going to become important later on in this presentation. Extensive ancient underground networks discovered throughout Europe. So we just discussed about the Stonehenge and about Albion and the race of giants that used to be there. So is it the race of giants that created Stonehenge? The big structures, just like the giants that created Baalbek and the giant Atlanteans that created all of them being giants, did they create the pyramids? So they created Stonehenge. But for what purpose? What purpose could they need to create Stonehenge that would keep track of the sun's movements? Well, I think the best answer would be this. If you look at the age of the pyramids and the Sphinx to be about 10,000 BC, and they say that the weather was different back then in that region. It was a lot more rain. It was not as hot and arid as it is today. So what does that tell you? Now look at the Egyptian mythology about the underworld. That's right, the underworld. Why would the ancient giants need an underworld? Well, I do believe that these ancient reptilian giants actually needed an underworld that had to do with the sun. That's right, the sun. Because of the skin pigmentation. That's why they created structures all around the world, such as Stonehenge, to keep track of the sun's movements. They created structures underground, just like Derinkuyu, just like the hypogeum, when certain times of the year when the ultraviolet lights would affect them the most, they sought refuge under the ground to protect them from the sun. Archaeologists uncovered thousands of Stone Age underground tunnels stretching across Europe from Scotland to Turkey, perplexing researchers as to their original purpose. This is from ancientorigins.net. So we're now talking about tunnels, people. Tunnels that led from Europe, from Scotland, all the way to Turkey. How is that even fathomable? Who created them? And why? I think we've already discussed the why. There are other ancient solar henges right here in the United States, and I showed you that there have been giant skeletons found all over the United States, from Texas, Massachusetts, Ohio, and don't forget the reptilian serpent mound that was found right there in Ohio. But what about the blue kachina, the Hopi story of the lizard people that live underground in the United States? Let's take a look. Right here, the Kachina doll, Hopi, North American Indian tribe. As a matter of fact, they will tell you, Hopi Kachina doll of Mongaya, 1931. The Mongaya Kachina is a lizard or chameleon kachina who sometimes serves as guard Katsinia. Reptile kachinas. Now, we have a reptile lizard race that, according to their mythology of the Hopis, lives underground. If there are tunnels found all throughout Europe leading from Scotland all the way to Turkey, where was Derinkuyu? That's right, in Turkey. But why would these giant races, who surely were over there creating pyramids in places like Egypt, how did they find their way all the way over this direction? That's right, because of the climate change throughout the periods of years had led them to migrate from that area where they find themselves all the way over into England, right? They had made tunnels leading all the way from Turkey to Scotland. That's right, Scotland. So basically, Stonehenge and other henges were keeping track of the sun's movements for the time of year. Because their white skin, these giants were white, these giant reptiles, or reptilian race, were white. They could not handle the sun. How do we know this? The name Albion means chalky white. The word albino or albinism comes from the exact same word. Albino, Albion, chalky white. Does that mean that the giant double-rowed teeth surely had to have been some kind of reptilian race giant? Were they having really chalky white skin? And that is the reason why we find that they built these underground structures to get away from the sun, and they kept track of the sun in those times of year to go underground to seek refuge from the sun. Now, we have a problem though, don't we? If there are all kinds of tunnel systems that they have discovered in Europe, leading from Scotland to Turkey, and that was a giant reptile race or reptilian race that had created them, and for that purpose. What about the United States? There is where it's going to get interesting, folks. Do you remember that map I told you that we need to go back and look at? And do you remember how we saw that there is main tunnel sites? You see all these right here. This is a main tunnel site. This is a main tunnel system. All of these systems right here, right? You see this top of this map right here? Do you see what this says? Inner Earth Access Map. And look at this symbol right here. That's right. That is the serpent mound serpent. This is the, what is this? That looks like the trident of Poseidon. This looks like the star symbol of the celestial wheel that I already presented in my other video of Shamash, who happens to be none other than the god Enki, right? So what is this map really? This map is not about tunnels that the government had created. This is a tunnel map of what the Anunnaki giant reptilian race had created, and it has been underneath us. As a matter of fact, there's a story that is, I do believe could possibly be bunk, but then again not bunk. And there is a story back from 1934 where a guy claimed that he was speaking to a Hopi chief who told him that there is an ancient lizard race that lives underground, and there is a tunnel system under Los Angeles, and he says that the lizard race hoards gold underground throughout these tunnels. So the guy, taking his cue from this mythological story that this chief told him, decides to get some backers in his endeavor to go under Los Angeles to where these tunnels are to search out this gold throughout the tunnels. Now, guess what? If there are tunnels all the way throughout Scotland to Turkey, why can't there be tunnels under the United States going throughout all over the United States? I went, and you can see them all right here. All of these maps right here, I'll show you. I don't want to do it all because I don't want to go over time here. All of these Google Maps right here, I checked every site where giant skeletons were found, and all of these points where it says right here, look at this, known caverns. All of these caverns right here, where these little black dots, I find that those are the locations of where giant skeletons were found. And it just so happens that on this map here is main tunnel sites, right? What did Phil Schneider tell us about his findings when they were getting ready to build the Dulce base? Do you remember they drilled 4 holes? When they went down into the hole, there was a race of alien, I'm not sure if he called them giants. I don't remember. I can't remember off the top of my head whether he called them giants at that time. But he said that there was an alien race under the ground. That's right, a reptilian alien race. Is that confirmation of the Hopi legends of the blue Kachina? Interestingly enough, the Kachina story is also found in the Denver airport. I've already done a video about the shape of the body right here. You will notice that in the 2 creation stories in the Sumerian tablets, there's 2 races of ancient alien gods, the Anunnaki and the Ajiji. Let's talk about the blood types here real quick. Now, according to their creation story, the Ajiji gods were being used as a slave alien race. They rebelled against the Anunnaki. the leader of the rebellion, after he stole the tablets of destiny, was taken into custody. He was destroyed, and his DNA was used to create a slave labor race with an existing being who was already on the earth. Then it was Enki who went behind his brothers Back and Lil, and he created Adapa. He created Adapa out of that race, or that slave labor race, that he used to create out of the Agigi blood, of the Agigi DNA. It is my belief that since all of them center around the Agigi race, that would be the O blood type, the Omega. And I've already showed you on the Abraxas Chiro that you will find the same symbol right here, which appears in many other cultures like the Nazi Germany and the Norse mythology, the Othala. That's right, the Othala. Let's take a look and see if we can see that here real quick. Right here. Take a look at the body of the blue Kachina. Take a look at the legs right here. Let's see. Can you see it? Right? Exactly. That's what you see on the Abraxas Chiro. Right there. Right there. When he says, I am the Alpha and the Omega, Abraxas is two deities combined into one. Why? Because his parents were two different deity races. His father was an Anunnaki deity, or alien race, and his mother was an Agigi race. That's right, an Agigi race. So there, that would explain the Alpha and the Omega when he said, I am the Alpha blood type and the Omega blood type, but I am the last of them. Why? Because we can see with the blood types that we have today that A and the O do not go together. O is its very own blood type all to itself, right? And if you look at the creation story of the Agigi DNA that was applied to the existing being, you will see the Omega symbol right in the Sumerian tablet itself. There is where the Greeks got their ancient Omega symbol, right here. That's right, from the Agigi blood type. Oh, it is the only race of alien beings that was used in every single one of the creation. First, it was used for the slave labor after they revolted with the existing being that was already on the earth. Then Enki used that creature later on to create Homo sapiens after he took that being and implanted the eggs into the Anunnaki goddesses, where the story of Adapa comes from. That's right, Adapa the wise one, the first Homo sapien. So you can already see now the A blood type is from the Anunnaki. The O blood type is from the Agigi. And then the B blood type, most assuredly, since there's only three, has to be the creation that was created of the first human beings. Not the first being that was on the earth where the Agigi blood type or DNA was included with it, but the one after it was included. That is where the B blood type comes from. Now, where does the negative blood type, the Rh negative and the Rh positive, that is still kind of up in the air as far as does it have anything to do with the possibly the giant aspect? I don't know. We're not going to get into that. That is going to be beyond the scope of this presentation. But let's go back here a second. So we've already covered, were the giants a race of white giant reptoid or reptilian race? Well, consider the story out of Mexico with the Aztecs. Remember, they were visited by Quetzalcoatl. In the Toltecs or the Olmecs, it was Kukulkan, and he was the feathered serpent deity, and he stated that he was going to be returning. When Hernando Cortez returned in 1513. It was Montezuma who was sure that that was return of the gods. What made him think that the white color of Hernando Cortez was the return of the gods? That's right, because this reptilian serpent-like race that came to visit was of the very same skin color. Yes. But now that we know that they created these structures underground to get away from the sun, and we know that they created the Stonehenge and other henges all around the globe to keep track of the sun, to know when to go underground to seek refuge from the sun's harmful rays. Why? Because, as I stated, the place called Albion, that later became Great Britain, means chalky white. Albinos, they get their name from the exact same word, Albion, chalky white. That means that their pigment of the skin, it lacks melatonin or whatever, the pigment of the skin cannot handle the sun. Albinos burn very, very easily under the sun. Is that where the albino gets this infliction from? Due to these ancient reptilian race? I do believe it does. And when you start seeing the pattern of how the giants moved from the non-arid region of Upper Africa, Egypt, back in 10,000 BC, when it was not, when it had a completely different climate, that they end up migrating over in another direction. And they found themselves all the way over in Europe, Turkey to Europe, then to the United States. That's right. We find that a lot of the gods being worshipped by people like the Norse, they seem to have all their gods as they migrated and moved along. It seems like the gods almost duplicate the other gods from the region where the giants were at before, the Atlanteans or the Atlantean giants. How can a race of giants create these structures above ground, such as Baalbek? I already showed you that in my other videos about who created Baalbek, a race of giants from the line of Cain. That's right. And you see who it was who created the pyramids in Egypt. Surely they had to have created the Stonehenge. Surely they had to have created the tunnels that led all the way from Scotland all the way to Turkey, or should I say vice versa? Is that how they made their way from Turkey all the way to Scotland? Is it the reason why they created these tunnels because the surface of the sun, their skin could not handle the sun, so they were digging their tunnels all the way to find a place where they could come out above ground? It's quite possible. It's quite possible. But I do believe that will answer the question about Stonehenge, why they were keeping track of the movement of the sun and the solstices. It wasn't about sacrifice, and it wasn't about ceremonial. It was about keeping track so they didn't burn up. Now check this out. Listen to this. How do we know that this is most likely the true case? Well, considering that the Anunnaki came from the constellation Draco, how do we know this? The pole star Thuban can be found as being the pole star in ancient Egypt. Thuban and the pole star is being demonstrated right on the Hoover Dam, right? Thuban and the pole star, right? Now, so the Anunnaki then, this race of giants, came from the constellation Draco, and the Ajiji gods came from the constellation Orion. The pyramids have two ports coming out the side, one aimed directly at each one of those two constellations. So where does the story of Dracula come from? None other than the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, Bram Stoker. That's right. The story of Dracul, Vlad the Impaler's father, was from the Order of the Dragons. That's right. Order of the Dragons. Dracul means Draco. Mr. Bram Stoker created a character called Dracula who could not come out in the sunlight. You starting to pick up now? You starting to see where the story of Dracula actually came from? According to the story of the giants, in many places, they were cannibalistic eaters of men. Strangely enough, the story in Mexico about the visit of Quetzalcoatl and Kukulkan and blah, 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 they appeared to sacrifice people just like Quetzalcoatl was probably most likely doing, ripping people apart and eating them. The story of Jack and the Beanstalk, fee, fi, fo, fum. I smell the blood of an Englishman. Exactly. It had to do with about eating human beings, or should I say Homo sapiens. And that's what's most scary to me, is that if there is going to be a time, let's say the lizard people really do live under the United States. Let's say that they really do. This map right here will show you the Serpent Mound here. It shows you the Trident of Poseidon. It shows you main tunnel sites, reported entrance, known caverns, and Mr. Phil Schneider ran into an alien race that was living underground, just like the Hopi legends state. Is it really beyond the realm of believability that there are tunnels running all the way through Europe, but there are not tunnels running underground in the United States? If they can do that, then what makes you think that they can't do this? Well, I hope that explains to you all about the solar henges that are all over the United States that have been found up around Ohio area. I hope that explains to you about Stonehenge and the purpose for it being built. I hope that explains to you about Derinkuyu and also other places like the Hypogeum, where they needed to be away from the sun at certain times of the year. And that's why they used places like Stonehenge to keep track of the sun so they didn't burn up. As a matter of fact, let me just show you one other two things here. Here is one picture right here showing where a very tall female with it appears to be a child giant was found. And they go on to state right here, the giant race shared an identical material culture, a religion of constructing burial mounds for the dead, and solar temples called henges to track the movement of the sun. Here is one of those right here. 9-foot skeleton found in Indiana. Smithsonian scientists say it belongs to an ancient white race. That's white. An Albion. Albion. That's where the name albino comes from. An albino can handle the sun, but that doesn't mean that this giant race had the same eye condition and hair condition, because we see from these giants that some of them had long, long red hair. So let me see if there's anything else I need to show you here. Yeah, there's something that I wanted to add to this. You know, the Hopi legends speak of that when it appears that a star is going to return in the skies, the Kachina star or whatever it's called. I'm going off the top of my memory how the legend goes, that the Great Spirit or the Great Kachina is going to return to the top of the earth when this star returns. We're seeing Nibiru up there now. We are seeing where there's talk of an abyss being opened, and that somebody is being brought up out of the abyss for a reason. Now, I've already stated all of those reasons in some of my other videos that you will see. And this, what makes the United States so important that they're all living underground here, all of these tunnels that were built. Is that why, and I've already said this in some of my other videos, the strategic movements of these military exercises, where they're at. As you can see here, Texas, Colorado, so one here in Southern California, and also here in Florida, there's, you can see, known caverns. I will leave a link for all of the maps, and all you have to do is come to this map right here and look at the maps, and you'll see that these black dots are all the caverns where these giant races were found. They're trying to tell you that the serpent mound people, the lizard or the reptilian people, are the ones who created these tunnels underground. So for all you people who have said, oh, there's no way that the United States government could have created these tunnels because we would have known it, you're most likely right. But if they can build tunnels over there in Europe leading from Scotland to Turkey, then I guarantee you the tunnels on this map right here are most likely, almost all of them were built by an ancient reptilian lizard giant race that happens to be white. All right, everybody. Thanks.